Because my neighbors up in Sun Valley area have been asked me to ask about it, because we're seeing them by, like I said, hundreds to thousands of them. It's something we've never seen before.
If it's a forest pest, this is a really good book that you can look through up here that I use, so don't take it. But it's the Field Guide to Insects and Diseases of Arizona and New Mexico. It's also online.
Oh, okay.
It has really nice pictures, it describes the biology. If you're interested, you can just search for this, and it's really a good book. And you know, there's not very many people that print things anymore. Most all of it is online. So if you have an insect, or even just Google bark beetles, or it'll give you a lot of information. And if you can be your own detective, and you can have the wishbone-looking thing. That's ips. If it's packed with brass, that's a dendrochus. Kind of be your own sleuth here, but you can look a lot of those things up. Like I said, there's a handful, and they're up here, that are really active in this area right now.
The clickings out here, is that the boring going on?
You know, there's wood borers. It's like the Twilight Zone, because the trees are dead. The wood borers only go in dead trees, and it's the longhorn ones that they have really long antennae, and they're pretty big, and they land on you, and they have really sticky feet. You gotta kind of pull them off. They have a grub. Their larva is a grub, and when there are so many dead trees out there, and this happens in a fire situation, you can actually hear them chewing in the tree.
But they attack the dead trees.
But that's after the trees are dead.
Yeah. They're hard ones, I'm afraid.
Yeah, there might be like a cicada or something like that out there, but
If you sell lumber with wood boards in it,
that's what it
goes
sounds
into
like.
a home, they actually can bore out through your sheetrock. So most lumber
They
has
do,
to be killed
they do, that's one of the predators,
kill
but
that larva.
how many woodpeckers do we
So
have,
a
and how
lot of
many
sawmills won't take
insects do we have? Usually that is one of the ways that
trees
we
that
control
have had wood boards in them.
Just overall, I see a lot more of the caterpillars crawling around the buzzy caterpillars, is that often, or is that a totally different thing?
I don't think we're seeing so much of the caterpillar ones we would want to watch out for, like tussock moth. I don't think, and that's for, we're more in the lower end, the drier end, the pine country. We do have, if you see those webs in a pine tree, that's a tiger moth. We talked about the webs in the broadleaf tree, the aspen. But if you see it in a pine tree, there's a tiger moth that does the same thing in the pine trees. But the BT will kill all of the caterpillars. And I haven't really seen a lot of the caterpillar type insects, but the foliators really being an issue here in Ruidoso. They are a big issue up in the higher elevations, in the fir, more of the fir forest in the fir country.
Many fruit trees or pecans, they have a whitewash or a shade around them to protect them from what? Does this also help forest trees?
Well, I think that some of that is, I'm not an arborist, but I think some of that is trying to protect this tree from scald.
From what?
Sun scald, and, you know, things like that. And I don't know if there's anybody in here who does that practice, but it's not practical on a real large scale.
You mentioned earlier that the round-headed pine beetle flies in the fall.
Yes.
And you're talking about spraying in the spring when they fly. So is this something that we have to be cognizant of in the fall?
I
and
think
the spring?
your spray should be good for a year. Round-headed, the Ips is the one that's really killing a lot of trees in Ruidoso right now. And the most effective time to spray for that is in the spring. I think the round-headed is kind of a secondary. I'm not seeing a lot of round-headed out there. Mostly around here it's Ips.
If you spray in the spring and
It
it's
should
good
be
for a
good for a
year,
year.
then it'll get better.
And hopefully, like I said, when we we see this on the landscape, it cycles. And what is this doing for us on the landscape, if you wanna look at the half full, glass is half full? It's breaking up our landscape, because now there's gonna be holes there, which is good for fire, right? If that's what naturally happens on the landscape, that's what we're kinda trying to do, repeat with group selection. It's breaking up the green tree crown, the solid crown on our landscape, so it's not all bad. And it's gonna cycle, these populations will crash.
I read somewhere the other day that a 40-foot pine, Ponderosa pine is destroying on the water today. Is that accurate, you think?
I think it uses more than that.
Well, you know, you figure how many pine trees that we've lost around here, that's quite a bit of water going to recharge the aquifers. That ought to make some kind of difference. I mean, that's a lot of gallons of water.
That is. I would think so too, as many trees as we're losing off the landscape,
So,
that's,
there is a
translates
little
into
bit
gallons.
of glitter on,
Yeah, I like that, half full guy.
silk person on a pig's ear, so. Granddad used to say.
What do impact does this have on the birds in the area? Are we gonna see changes in the types of birds we have, or?
I would think that the birds are getting really fat. I would think that, and then their population is related to their food source. So if there's a lot of their food source, which right now, if they eat the beetles,
Well, I mean, nesting and stuff like that.
as far as the habitat for the nesting, you know, I think we have an awful lot of that still. I think there's still a lot of habitat out there. I don't think we're impacting the landscape to that scale. That's gonna be
In my Ponderosa pine, could you tell me a description of the pitch tube, its color, its size? I mean, I saw the slide, but I couldn't tell if that's a dime or a
It can be
quarter.
about the size of a quarter. It sticks out from the tree, maybe
Past the
anywhere
bark?
from a
Out
quarter
past
of
the
an
bark?
inch, yeah, to a pretty good one, a half an inch. It's very sticky. It has boring dust mixed in with the sap. It's kind of whitish and reddish. And when you touch it, it's really sticky. And a lot of times if you mess with it and kind of squish it open, the beetle's in there because it pitched it out. If it was a successful, let's get rid of this blood. But see, our problem right now is the trees aren't even making enough sap to have to pitch. So you've got to look in the crevices of the bark for boring dust. So you've got to get up close and personal to your tree and look in here in these cracks and crevices for a real fine red dust, red sawdust.
Will it be at eye level, or do I need to get a
It'll be all
40-foot
over
ladder?
the tree. It can be anywhere on the bowl of the tree from where you can see down to the base of the tree. I circle the tree and just start looking up and down that bowl in the bark, in these crevices to look for the boring dust of where these things came bored in.
Yeah. Thank you.
How far do these boats fly?
I don't know. How far do they fly?
Some research said up to 2 miles.
And when we get some of our winds in the spring,
Yeah.
I bet 60 miles. I would say that if you're worried about moving something far enough away, there isn't any far enough away.
So they're still active through October, right?
So, yeah, the insects are active, and if you wanna, you can come up here, and I'll leave these up here. Some of them winter over as adults, and some of them winter over as larvae, so it just depends on what kind of insect you're looking at.
Yes. Are they still active or not, the adults?
They should be done, now that it's starting to freeze, or get cold, it froze in my house. I'm hoping that they're getting ready to be done.
Do those
maybe a little bit, but then it killed a lot of trees and stressed a lot of trees, so then their food source was all over the landscape.
What's it stand for?
There's a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
The newspaper Dick was quoted as saying there was a bag that you can nail to the tree. Is that for the inch beetle or for the ponderosa? This was about 2 months ago.
Primarily for the bark beetle, but she mentioned it early that they're pretty species specific. Most of the commercial ones are done for the western pine beetle. And so you have to be real careful, because if you use the wrong one, it can actually attract beetles instead of repelling them. And so we do have, some of the commercial ones have been used. The Flying J out there swears by him. He says he thinks it saved a lot of his trees. So it's kind of, to me, like playing Russian roulette. It may work and it may not. But the spraying, according to the researchers that I've talked to, the spraying is more effective than the packets for the most part.
I read something from the state of Montana, and they don't recognize, they don't recommend injecting any insecticide into a pine tree, because they say that the mechanism to repel the beetle works on the insecticide that you inject into the tree. So they say it doesn't work, and they've been dealing with the mountain pine beetle up there for years, and well, that's about it. They don't recommend injecting anything in a pine tree. They say it doesn't work.
If you're gonna treat your trees, I know they're near and dear to your heart, and they're high value trees, they're on your property, you're on small scale. Just be really, really careful and get as much information as you can about what you're thinking of using. And understand what it's gonna do and what it's not gonna do for you. Yeah, you have a question?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that the two biggest factors in really like intensity of these conditions and rate of spread are cyclical drought and forest actually. The latter of which is primarily human caused, at least contemporaneously. So what I'm curious about is, one is will given like a long enough continuum, the forest actually come back? You touched on this a little bit earlier, come back to its natural state. And two, are the treatments aimed at accelerating that process, or is it really just a stopgap to prevent spread within like the urban interface?
I think the treatments are for high value trees that last a year. We're not considering anything on a large landscape level right now for treatment because of the limited time frame that you have, and if you aren't gonna take care of the real problem, which is reduced densities, then you haven't gained anything. Is the forest gonna recover to its natural state? What's the definition of that? So we're kind of struggling with that right now, as far as we know. When you look at historical conditions, there were very few trees. We aren't gonna go back to that. It's not acceptable to probably very many people in here at all. It's not acceptable to me, but we can use that kind of as a guide as to what was sustainable historically. And we can make some reference conditions and some desired conditions based on that, which is somewhere between the wide open forest we had historically and what we have now, the real dense that we know. Because what nature's telling us right now is we can't sustain that. The landscape can't sustain it. So Mother Nature is taking it out. Yeah, go ahead.
Sharon, how do we know if we have too many trees in our property?
You do.
Are they, I would look at the canopy and how much room that you've given that tree to grow. All trees need growing space. You saw from the watering slide that the feeder roots of that tree go past the trip line. So I would go, we talk about spacing in the forest, and now we're even getting away from that because sometimes that's not enough. not under an ordinance, or somebody's not telling you the trees need to be 25 feet apart or 30 feet apart, then you just need to look at your trees. You need to make sure you've got given that tree growing space in that crown sunlight, and that it's not crowded with other trees in that zone where it's collecting its water and its nutrients, which is at least half again the distance out of how wide your crown is. So if you're looking at your tree, and it's a nice big tree, and the crown is this wide, go half again out, all the way around, at least to give that tree enough room for water and nutrients. Yep, Ray?
Sharon, I'm gonna address that next month, but basically, there's not a set guideline because every site is gonna be different, and you just have to know what your site can handle. In other words, if you're on a steep, rocky slope, it's gonna be different than a valley bottom. So, you know, it varies. You have to look at each site.
And the key is how much water and how much nutrients is that tree getting? And if it's a poor site, it's gonna need a larger area than if it's a good site.
Any questions?
Thank you.
And any of the folks, you know, our forest professionals, we have, the Smoky Bear, or the Capitan District State Forester right here, or, I got it wrong. District Forester.
That's all right.
Okay, just promoted you. You know, we have several people from State Forestry, Village Forestry. Do any of you have anything you'd like to just add on, at the end of this presentation here?
I brought insects, so I did bring some insects over here. If you guys want to see how big a bark beetle actually is, or what a wood borer looks like, I have actual samples over here for you guys to look at if you'd like to see those.
For bringing the bus. And Dick?
You have resources available to you in the area, state forestry, and if you're in the village forestry, that actually can come out and help you with your tree situation, help you analyze it and see what it is. And the other thing I wanted to say is that you don't want to go out and just cause your tree starts turning brown, cut it down, because there are other things that cause trees to turn a little bit brown, like normal needle caps and some of those kind of things. So,
Which is happening this time of year.
for the most part, good fire management and good forest management will take care of a lot of the problems that we're talking about.
Let's have your attention for just a few more minutes, and we still have door prizes. We will have some time for meandering around and seeing the goodies. We have Laura Dobbs of South Central Mountain RC&D, who is another great resource for anything related to forest health. And our website is lbfrc.org, and we post a lot of contact information for all these agencies. And I can tell you, as a layperson trying to learn more about forest health and fire safety, these people and these organizations are great, and they're happy when you pick up the phone and call them and ask these questions. So Laura with South Central Mountain RC&D has a
I just have a favor to ask. The RC&D is in the process right now of working on collaborative forest restoration project, which involves some mechanical thinning as well as doing some prescribed burns and that type of thing. As part of that process, we'd like to gauge the perception of the local population as far as wildfire risk and your attitudes toward prescribed fire as a technique and a treatment. So this is a very brief questionnaire. If y'all would not mind just filling it out real quick, and you can drop it at the back on your way out, I would appreciate it very much, because we'd like to hear what you guys have to say.
Thank you, Laura. Frank or Bill or anybody have Bela, any comments you wanted to add?
The only thing I would add,
Hold on just a second, guys.
the only thing I would add, the gentleman you were asking about how to identify pitch tubes, like Sharon said, they range in size. The two main ways they kind of look like zits, little pimples or little volcanoes. You know, it's coming off the tree. There'll be a little hole sometimes right through the center of them. and they range from white to an off yellow. And there can be a couple, from just a handful, 3 or 4, to it just covering the whole tree. As soon as once you get an eye of what you're looking for, you'll be able to start picking them up. But they range anything from diameter from the size of a quarter down to even smaller than a dime. So, depending on the species, depending on the tree, and how much sap it's had to produce. The other thing is really to identify the kind of trees that are, once they've been infected, like we were talking, this time of year, we start getting those little bit of browning from the needles that are a few years old now that are ready to start dropping. What we really want to look for is the whole tree's color changes from like a real deep green that we're used to seeing them to kind of like an olive, a slightly yellowish olive green. Once you see that and you can see the crown, go look and you see pitch tubes, then you know it's infected. That'd be my 2 cents anyway.
But that phase that you're talking about where it's just going to olive, are the bugs still in the
Yes.
tree?
For the most part, yes.
So that's the one you want to go for first, leave the brown ones alone, cut that one down and burn it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Frank, would you like to give us a quick teaser for the session you're doing in November?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, some of the questions that were asked, the topic's going to be what does a healthy forest look like? And I'm going to pick up on some things that Sharon said about the overgrown conditions and what got us there historically, and maybe where we're headed a little bit.
Okay, it's gonna be a great session, and so don't forget, I'm gonna make sure you put that on your calendar, November 5th, same time, same place. We also really would prefer if you register. We're happy that people came that didn't register, but if you register next time, so if we have to, that we'll have plenty of seats. And not only because we're gonna do door prizes, but I do wanna give Sharon a proper thank you